The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, rel-mar Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're proudly coming to you through the ever-expanding X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and can also be found on our website, thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour, we'll be exploring Back to the Garden. You must always stand in the center of your circle, Wiyaka. If you do not, you will lose your way, my Lakota teacher repeatedly reminded me. How he could tell I was not energetically oriented with life was beyond me. If I'm just going to journey out of my body anyway, why is it so important to know exactly when and where I am? I would ask. Being exactly when and where you are is the gateway to the spirit world, he inevitably responded. The old man tirelessly instructed me on being present with all of my relations, as he used to call it. Before we performed any ceremony or entered a shamanic journey trance, he had me engage my heart and orient myself with the 7 directions: east, south, west, north, heaven, earth, and heart or center. Each direction corresponded with other aspects of life. I learned to call in the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, and air, the positions of the sun, dawn, everlight, sunset, and darkness, the times of life, childhood, young adulthood, midlife, and elders. With each direction, I was to call in the phases of the moon and the corresponding seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. I was to stand in the center of all these, what he referred to as being in the center of my circle. Every morning, midday, evening, and night, I was to say prayers to the corresponding positions of the sun, seasons, elements, and so on. These prayers were not idol worship. My teacher was a devout Christian and believed there was only one God. He saw the directions and all aspects of life as different divinations of that one God, or Wonkan Tonkin. The prayers served as a method of aligning my heart with the energy of each aspect by giving gratitude and showing loving appreciation for them. Why? Spiritual power is driven by nature, available only in the present moment. It's amazing how few of us are ever in the present. If we're not present with life and all of its aspects, we've separated ourselves from our birthright. We were designed to be co-creators of reality, empowered by love and life itself. Paradoxically, my teacher taught me that in honoring and aligning with the directions and corresponding aspects of life while standing in the center of them all, I could access the appropriate combinations to empower my intent regardless of the season or time of day. The center contains present, past, and future, ultimate potentiality, and unconditional love. As a society, we've so separated ourselves from nature as to become disempowered. In our attempts to subjugate the natural world, we've left the garden nature provides, staggering around in a shadowy abomination of our own making. Our distorted reality consumes much, polluting the natural world while we become sick and spiritually disconnected. The future of our world depends upon humanity returning to the garden and taking up its rightful place as co-creators. We can do this by standing in the center of our circle, honoring the directions and seasons. For only through nature can we align with natural rhythms and find our divinity. After years of laboriously calling in my circle, I can now become present with all that is through intent and a single breath. Now my garden is just a breath away. Our guest this hour, Master Charles Cannon, author of Living an Awakened Life, The Lessons of Love, is known worldwide as a modern spiritual teacher. He was given the title Master by his teacher to denote that he is a master spiritual teacher, one who can teach without words. Master Charles and I will return after a commercial break, and we're going to discuss the garden and our way to find our way back. It should be an amazing journey, so don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, thescienceofmagic.net. Current episodes are aired daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Though the world seems in turmoil around us, let's not lose our way. The stars still shine down, blessing us with their light. The sun rises every morning, chasing away the cold and darkness. There are good people of service in this world. We have much to be grateful for as we're wrapped in the arms of all of God's creation. This is Gwilda Wiyaka, host of the Science of Magic Radio, wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas. I hope your holiday is filled with comfort and joy as you're surrounded by those you love. I'd like to thank all of you for being our loyal listeners on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and for joining us on this grand adventure called life. As the New Year's dawns, let us all stand in truth as we embrace peace. Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is modern spiritual teacher Master Charles Cannon, author of Living an Awakened Life. Master Charles Cannon is an acknowledged pioneer in the evolution of human consciousness. He founded Synchronicity Foundation for Modern Spirituality in 1983 and developed high-tech meditation and the holistic lifestyle, which have helped transform the lives of thousands worldwide. Master Charles' website is synchronicity.org. Master Charles, thank you so much for joining us on the Science of Magic.
My pleasure, Gwilda. Great to be with you.
You know, one of the things my original shamanic teacher instilled in me was the importance of thinking with and coming from the heart. Would you speak to this as love and its power to transmute?
Absolutely. I think all great teachers, all great spiritual teachers, great masters have always said that the heart is the gateway, the heart field as the center of our individuated consciousness, and yet they know that for the most part we have great difficulty accessing the heart field because the mind field gets in the way. And so they first have to work with us to, in a sense, untangle us from our attachment and addiction to the mind, to our beliefs, our thoughts, our stories about who we are and what life is, that creates a virtual reality that we impose upon true reality. And once they have assisted us to untangle ourselves from it, then when the mind field can remain balanced, we can move beyond it, so to speak, and access the heart field, which is the gateway to true reality, as you so beautifully said in your introduction to this show, that heart field is the gateway to the here and now of true reality. And of course, that true reality is life itself as a conscious energy or consciousness, which is innately a benevolent, loving, blissful consciousness. So the more we are able to access the heart field and live within its presence in the here and now, the more fulfillment we find in life as we more fully unveil our true nature as one and the same consciousness.
You know, it seems like if we aren't standing in the heart center or in the here and now, we're left with having to try to steal energy or love or whatever from other places because we can't access it ourselves. Is this what you see?
Absolutely so. I'm always reminded of that well-known song, "Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places."
Yeah.
And that seems to describe the human condition, that we have entered into this illusory, egoic separation between ourselves and life, or a separation between ourselves as a subject and all the objects that we encounter. And the more we maintain that egoic separation, the more conflict we create, and the more conflict we create, the more suffering we create. So as long as we live in that unawakened state of egoic separation, the more miserable overall we are, and we don't touch or find or experience that true love, which is our very nature. If love is the nature of life, if it is the nature of consciousness, then all and everything is innately that same loving energy. Often people will say to me that they can't find love, or that they have difficulty accessing the experience of love. And I always go back to Neil Donald Walsh in his famous books, Conversations with God, and there's a statement in there that I've always loved, in which he says, "If you would experience love, be loving," which draws us right to the present here and now, and that as forms of consciousness, forms of life, love is innate to us, and we simply have to be it, to flow it, to live truthfully within it, rather than seek it outside of ourselves or in addition to ourselves. The more we seek it, the more we push it away, the more we embrace it and simply allow ourselves to be as we truly are, then love flows fully, moment by moment by moment.
Well, can meditation, which is often viewed as a mental exercise, help us return to the heart, and if so, how?
Absolutely, and wonderful question. In all of the great wisdom traditions and great philosophical systems of life, I think the most important principle that is taught in all of them is what is called the principle of balance. And it states that we live in a relative reality and that all experience is relative. There's always two polarities. Let's call them the subjective interior and the objective exterior polarities of life, of consciousness.
Sorry, would you explain that a little different? I don't get that.
That we live in a relative reality?
No, that I get. The subjective interior and exterior, that's the part I got lost on.
Okay. The two polarities of our relative experience we could call the subjective interior and the objective exterior. The subjective interior is the inside of us, that formless consciousness. And the outside of us is its opposite, the objective world around us, all the forms of the same consciousness that we are. So subject and object are in truth the same consciousness, and yet we live in this illusory separation of the two. So we as a subject create ourselves as separate and different from all objects that we encounter. And this allows us then to have an imbalance in our experience in which the objective dominates the subjective. So all great traditions and masters teach that principle of balance, that wholeness is proportional to balance in the relative construct. So if we are dominantly imbalanced to the objective, we have to cultivate the opposite, the subjective. And meditation then is the most time-honored technique of balance, because what happens when you meditate? You close your eyes, you shift your focused awareness from the objective exterior to the subjective interior, and maintaining that interior dominant focus, you create relative balance, and your holistic awareness proportionately expands. So meditation then really becomes a gateway to the experience of true reality in the here and now of its happening as one blissful, loving, peaceful, benevolent consciousness.
Okay, so I'm going to need to decode this a little bit, if you don't mind. So you're saying there's a subject and the objective. So if we're looking outside of ourselves at the objects in our world, that's the objective, and what we are inside ourselves is the subjective, and we have to find a balance between, but don't we create all of it anyway? I'm kind of lost.
Yes, we create all of it as consciousness, but the more we involve ourselves in the creation of life, the more the innate awareness of that truth contracts and becomes obscured, and we lose the awareness of the oneness of all and everything and ourselves as a creator of our experience. We enter into...
So we kind of get lost in the illusion of our own creation?
Yeah, exactly. And,
gotcha.
And create this illusory separation between subject and object in which we experience them as different. We experience ourselves as separate and different from all the objects that we encounter.
Well, isn't that pretty disempowering? Isn't that pretty disempowering then? If we're viewing ourselves as separate, we see ourselves as victims of the objects rather than the creators of them?
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. And that is the essential conflict then in the majority of human beings, that unresolved conflict of separation, first between you and your God, and then between you and everyone and everything that you encounter. And that unresolved conflict always results in suffering. So that's the virtual reality that we create and journey until we can be full enough in the experience of illusion, of what we are not, so that we can ultimately awaken to the truth or the experience of what we are.
So as long as we're seeing ourselves as separate from, we can't access universal love then, can we?
That's absolutely correct. Because separation and conflict contracts us. It densifies us and contracts our awareness. And we lose holistic awareness and enter into a very limited awareness of who we are and what life is as one consciousness. So yes, indeed, it limits us and blocks our access to the truth of the one consciousness that is all.
So if we're disconnected from the truth of oneness, we're disconnected from the flow of love?
Absolutely so. And then we're looking for love outside of ourselves. We're looking for love in all the wrong places.
In all the wrong places.
Yeah, because we think that we believe that we don't have it. And what you believe you don't have is what you seek. And the more you seek it, the more you say to yourself that you don't have it, and that's the experience you have.
We're going to have to pick up with this on the other side of a commercial break. Master Charles and I will return to our discussion on the flip side. We're coming to you through the X Zone Broadcast Network. Don't miss the other fine shows and hosts on xzbn.net. You're listening to The Science of Magic, thescienceofmagic.net. There's more love to come, so don't go away. Hi, I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Did you know that shamanism has been around for 50,000 years and practiced by all indigenous cultures? These ancients understood there's more to healing and health than just the physical. All four levels, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, must be addressed in order for us to enjoy healthy, abundant lives. To find quality shamanic healing you can trust, you need look no further than Path Home Long-Distance Shamanic Healing Program. All Path Home practitioners have been trained and certified through Path Home Shamanic Art School, a Colorado State occupational school, and are handpicked, personally trained by me, Gwilda Wiyaka, to uphold the excellence of Path Home's long-distance program. Live abundantly. Schedule a shamanic session with me or one of my quality practitioners today. Call 303-775-3431 or visit findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Master Charles Cannon, author of Living an Awakened Life, The Lessons of Love. Charles, we were talking about looking for love in all the wrong places. You know, one of the things that I've noticed is I don't think we really understand what love is to start out with, and people tend to bargain with it, like withholding it unless they get what they want. Can you tell us a little bit about unconditional love and how it differs from this?
Unconditional love is a term to describe the innate essence of life. Life energy is a loving, benevolent energy in and of itself. You cannot really separate love from life. And as a conscious energy, we term it consciousness. So again, the very nature of consciousness is love. Love and consciousness, love and life cannot in truth be separated. So if you are awake and fully alive to life consciously lived, then you experience a consistent and constant flow of love through all of your experience. And that loving energy is what is often termed the high of life consciously lived. It's actually an intoxicating, opiating, euphoric experience of life that is really beautiful, just like what human beings refer to as being in love. Well, being in love isn't dependent upon anyone or anything. It is your very nature. And the more you awaken to that, you realize that you are in love with life itself, that life itself is a loving, benevolent, and blissful energy.
Well, that brings us to a paradox, doesn't it? So if we use the normal human condition of trying to earn love or trying to withhold love and bargain with love, we're out of love. We're not standing in the flow of love, and therefore we never get to know it.
That's absolutely correct. Most human beings experience is a very limited version of love that, again, is created by, colored by, influenced by their thoughts and beliefs about what they think love is. And again, if it's that limited, it delivers a very fragmented experience of love. It's like you have this big painting, let's say, or a big canvas, and you have a cloth over it, and someone asks you to view the whole painting, and you lift up one corner of the canvas and you expose 10% of it, and you say, oh, this is what the painting is about. Well, it's the same for human beings in relation to our experience of love. We have this 10% perspective, and we miss the other 90%. And when we awaken and unveil that full painting, then we experience what you have termed and what many have termed unconditional love as the very nature of life itself.
Why do you think we've become such a mental-dominated society, and what do you see as the limiting effects of this?
Again, in the great wisdom traditions and the great holistic models of reality, they say that this is the natural process within the relative construct, that we first have to experience what we are not in order that in relation to it we can experience what we are. So we first have to invest ourselves into this egoic illusion of separation and difference and fully experience the limitations of life. Again, the experience of what we are not as someone or something that is separate and different and independent from all and everything. And when we are full in the experience of what we are not, we awaken out of that into the experience of who and what we are as one consciousness. So the journey is a really intricate journey of consciousness in the ever unfolding discovery of itself in its greater evolution. So we could say really that we're all here to grow. And through the experience of life, we grow, we evolve. And what's the measure of our growth and our evolution in individuated consciousness? It is always awareness. We grow in awareness, and that awareness becomes progressively more and more holistic and all-inclusive. And yet, the world around us is the world around us, and everyone is at a different place in this journey, and the majority seems to remain very fragmented in that involutionary cycles, still journeying separation and illusion, or the experience of what they are not, and that creates a very fragmented human experience and a very fragmented world around us. But
speaking about fragmentation, it seems like our urban lifestyles have separated us from the seasons and from the natural cycles. How do you see this impacting us?
Absolutely so. I mean, it's easy to experience the oneness of life in nature, and I'm sure you know that, or know many people who have expressed that you come into nature and your awareness expands. You're able to sense in every way the beauty of life, the innate oneness and harmony of life. And yet, most people live in big cities and are separated from that connection to nature, and it's much more challenging. And yet, even in the midst of the big city, we can still find that holistic awareness and that inclusive awareness that allows us to open to all and everything as forms of the same life, the same consciousness that we are. You could be sitting in your apartment building in the middle of New York City with, 15 million minds stacked around you in corresponding apartment buildings, and you could look out that window and you could say, wait a minute, all of these buildings and all the people in them are forms of the same life, the same consciousness that I am.
So how do you think
if I include that?
How do you think if we reconnect with the natural cycles that could aid us bringing that back to mind, bringing back that we are all riding this spaceship called Earth together, and that makes a oneness of it? Is there a way that we can do that by connecting with the natural cycles that the Earth goes through?
Absolutely so. And those natural cycles, for example, are what I've used in this book, Living an Awakened Life, the natural cycles of the seasons, and just to see the natural cycles of life and the flow of life that is very harmonious within that cyclic nature. And that happens no matter where we are, whether we are living rurally surrounded by nature or whether we're living in the big city. Those natural cycles are always available to us and can become gateways to the experience of true reality.
I love that. In ancient times, entire structures were built focused on the equinoxes and solstices. What can you tell us about them and why they were viewed as so important?
The equinoxes and the solstices were really balance points within the natural cycle. And as balance points, they were recognized as gateways. At those times, the two relative polarities came into a natural balance. And as that natural balance was sustained at that time, through balance, the gateway to wholeness or to truth or to an awakened, more expansive experience of life was accessed. And so those times became ritualized and celebrated as times to focus on accessing true reality through the principle of balance in nature. And it's still, of course, true today. If you honor those natural cycles and recognize the balance points, you can access a greater holistic awareness and truthful perception of reality.
So can we become empowered by aligning with the natural cycles? Can it actually enhance our intent?
Absolutely so, because the more wholeness we actualize, the more amplitude there is to our power. And that's an important principle, that if we remain contracted and fragmented and limited, we have very limited amplitude of power. We think we're very powerful egoically, but in truth, we have very little power. And yet, the more we awaken and the more we are aligned to the oneness of all and everything, the amplitude of our power radically increases. And that power flowing through us then increases our awareness. Our own presence is the amplitude of that power, and we experience that oneness in ourselves, and likewise it flows through us and empowers or affects everyone and everything that we encounter. So yes, it's absolutely true.
So if we try to own power, which is what we're taught to do in this society, we freeze it and lose its potential. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So it's
Absolutely so.
It's something we channel by being balanced ourselves?
Absolutely. Because again, wholeness is proportional to balance. So the more balance you are able to create and sustain, the more wholeness you are able to consistently actualize in your experience, and that's where the greater amplitude of your power is. You know, a good example of this is great masters. If you've ever met a great master, it is the amplitude of their power that validates them. You can sit with them for 5 minutes.
We're going to have to take a break and pick up with the masters on the other side of the break. Master Charles and I will be back shortly, so don't leave us now. This is The Science of Magic, thescienceofmagic.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. We're brought to you daily in the leader of paranormal, spirituality, alternative health programming, the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Though the world seems in turmoil around us, let's not lose our way. The stars still shine down, blessing us with their light. The sun rises every morning, chasing away the cold and darkness. There are good people of service in this world. We have much to be grateful for as we're wrapped in the arms of all of God's creation. This is Gwilda Wiyaka, host of the Science of Magic Radio, wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas. I hope your holiday is filled with comfort and joy as you're surrounded by those you love. I'd like to thank all of you for being our loyal listeners on the X Zone Broadcast Network and for joining us on this grand adventure called life. As the New Year's dawns, let us all stand in truth as we embrace peace. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Master Charles Cannon, author of Living an Awakened Life, The Lessons of Love. Charles, just before we went into the break, we were talking about power and masters. So would you describe a little more clearly for me what exactly kind of power we're talking about and what the mastery of it looks like?
The power that we're talking about is the power that is innate to life, innate to the consciousness that is all and everything. And human beings, as we know, limit that power through the creation of illusion and a virtual reality, and have a very limited experience of life, or a low amplitude of power. And the more we are able to awaken out of that limited virtual reality into the experience of true reality, the more the amplitude of our power is restored or unveiled or more fully actualized. And we were referencing that in terms of a living master as a good example of that. I've had the great good fortune in my life of meeting many great masters, and what you notice is in their presence this high amplitude power, this very palpable vibration that empowers you, that entrains you. It sort of elevates you to a correspondent experience in yourself. And this is why great masters have been so time-honored in human experience as an easy way to awaken. In their very presence, you are able to experience true reality and move beyond the virtual reality that you've become identified with. But this is true of all awakening experience. The more you awaken, the more the greater amplitude of the innate power of life actualizes and allows you then to remain more present as presence itself, moment by moment by moment.
Our guest this hour is modern spiritual teacher, Master Charles Cannon. He's the author of Living an Awakened Life. His website is synchronicity.org. You were saying something interesting about entrainment, and I would like to go into that a little bit, because what I found is our presence in the world can make a difference overall by what we're bringing through for others to align with or not. Would you mind speaking to that?
Absolutely. Often as a spiritual teacher interacting with many different people and their appreciation for what you share with them, they always want to bring you some sort of a gift. And I always say to them, the gift of your presence is the greatest gift you can give me. The greatest gift that you can give, the greatest contribution you can make to your world is your very presence, because your presence is the very vibration of life as a benevolent, loving, peaceful, and blissful energy. So if you are living fully anchored within that unified state of being, if you are living in presence, that is the automatic contribution that you're making to our world, and it makes a difference. If one does it, it makes a difference. If 1 million, if 1 billion of us could live in that awakened state and make that contribution, it would be a completely different world than the one we're living in right now.
Speaking of which, you speak of evolution. Do you think we're in evolutionary times? And if so, why right now?
I speak of evolution in terms of individuated consciousness. All human beings are individuated forms of consciousness, and through our experience we grow or evolve. So in that sense, consciousness is evolving the experience of itself through the relative construct. And the measure of that, again, is always awareness. How aware are we? How awake are we? How fully alive are we moment by moment? And I'm sure you would agree that you are more aware today than you were 25 years ago. It's just the nature of evolving consciousness. And the more we evolve, the more our holistic awareness increases, and we're able to recognize the innate oneness, the interconnectedness, the interrelatedness of all life forms, the unity within all diversity. And I see in the world today that is progressing appropriately, albeit slowly, a lot more slowly, I think, than a lot of us would like it to be, but yet we have to acknowledge that it's happening. Little by little, more and more every day, people are awakening. They're opening to that essential truth of the oneness, the interconnectedness, the interrelatedness of all and everything as one life, one love, one consciousness.
You also speak of the urgency of the times. Would you speak to that?
The urgency of the times is always the dance between the virtual and the true. And if we don't maintain a balance of the two, of awakened versus non-awakened people, then one can dominate the other. And where we sit today is in the dominance, still slight dominance of the fragmented over the holistic, the non-awakened over the awakened. And that is life lived within that egoic illusion of separation and the conflict and suffering that it creates. So the urgency of our times, to me, is that if we don't maintain a more awakened balance, that we put everything in jeopardy. We can, in the twinkling of an eye, not only destroy ourselves, but also destroy our whole world. So we have to bring as much emphasis as we can to the truth and to the principles of consciousness that allow us to awaken and more fully experience true reality and the oneness of all life.
Do you think that where we are in the galaxy, the energies that we're being exposed to, are more in support of finding that balance, of finding the unity, than they have been in the past?
Yes, absolutely so. Many years ago, we used to say that maybe 10% of the human population was awake, and now that number, I think you could safely say, has gone up to 25%. But what's always interesting to me is that 25% of awakened people are holding the balance to 75% of non-awakened people. So where is the power? The power is really in the awakened experience. And I see that and experience that increasing day by day all across this world in cultures as diverse as our own. And it gives me great hope in the truth that consciousness is intelligent, life is intelligent, it knows what it's doing, it is evolving through its experience, creating the future of itself, and that is a more awakened and truthful experience of itself as the great unity in all diversity.
We have about a minute and a half left. What would you advise people that are really wanting to engage in this unity and find the oneness? What would be the best thing they could do?
I think the easiest gateway is love. And that's why I have said in this book and previous books that the bottom line for me is we're here to learn how to love. And if we can first access that in ourselves, can we love the life that empowers us, without which we have nothing? Can we make that ultimate value? Can we recognize it in ourselves? And then can we likewise recognize it in all and everything we encounter? If we can learn how to love in this regard, we create the balance that allows us to be holistically aware and awake and live ever more fulfilling lives.
Well, it has been a pleasure to talk about these things together and to look at them from different angles. And it's just been wonderful having you on the show. And people can find your books on Amazon and wherever place books are sold, I assume?
Absolutely so. And,
right.
Of course, at our main platform, synchronicity.org.
Fantastic. Master Charles, thank you so much for being on The Science of Magic.
My pleasure, Gwilda, absolutely. And in conclusion, may all blessings continue to shower upon you.
Thank you. Our guest this hour has been modern spiritual teacher Master Charles Cannon, author of Living an Awakened Life. His website is synchronicity.org. This has been The Science of Magic. Don't forget to join us on the next episode of The Science of Magic. Do remember you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you find your way back to the garden.